Welcome back to the 2 Months Podcast presented by BioSteel. I'm your host, Joshua Marshall. I'm with my co-host, Phil Stockley. Phil, how's it going?
Doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. Just fighting it a bit here, just a bit tired and feel fatigued and whatnot. But
That
just
late game last night, eh, bud?
yeah, just powering through as best we can. So, but yeah, no, back to the swing of things here, and the John Reed week that we had was a success. Knowing that we have some things we need to work out, and that was on my end. So, but no, it was fun, and this is kind of our first time back since that. And we had our recent guest was a good friend of the pod now, and Doug Gilmore. So, just kind of your thoughts of that Doug Gilmore interview that was out a couple weeks ago.
It was so much fun having Doug Gilmore on. He's such just a genuine nice guy. Like people didn't see because it was before you hit record. He showed us around his man cave. He looked like so excited to like watch the Leafs play that night. He was just top notch. Can't thank him enough for coming on with us. It was just a blast.
Yeah, no, for sure. That was amazing. And yeah, today on the pod, we have Ron MacLean from Hockey Night in Canada and Rogers Sportsnet. And that interview is going to come up right now. Mutts fans, our next guest is a legend in the hockey world. He is also, one of the game's greats, and we've for so many years in our living rooms, we've been able to watch him in our homes on our TVs, and he's brought such a great care and great love to our game. He is again a legend, and he's from Red Deer, Alberta. He is a local legend as well here in the Alberta community. You can find him on Hockey Night in Canada with the crew, the great crew there. We'd like to welcome Ron MacLean to the 2 Months Podcast. Ron, how's it going?
It's great, Joshua, and that's a really nice introduction. And hi, Phil. And I love the word "love the game" because that's what was instilled in me in Red Deer for sure. There was a guy, Cease Swanson, was the guy who coached the junior. He coached Daryl Sutter. He didn't coach all the Sutters, but he certainly coached Daryl. And he also ran a skate sharp shop down below the stands in the Red Deer Arena. So I would listen to the Rustler, was our Tier 2 Junior A team, listen to the Rustler broadcast on the radio if it was a road game. And then the next day I'd be down at the arena and I'd be in that little room having that coach of this, bigger than life team to me, sharpening my hockey skates as, I'm, at that point, I'm 11 years old. So I'm just like Theo or, Phil's son. It's just amazing to remember how great he was with us kids. And that's where it all kind of started.
That's perfect. That's beautiful. And Ron, we unfortunately we got to start with some sad news of the day, and that was Bobby Hall passing away at the age of 84. I know you probably have many great stories and great thoughts and prayers and great things to say about Bobby and what he's done for the game. And before we kind of get into some current events and your story, but a thought on the legend Bobby Hall.
Well, there's another guy that I credit with instilling my love of the NHL and Hockey Night in Canada. Believe it or not, Joshua, when I was a young boy, my dad was Air Force, so we moved around a lot before settling in Red Deer when I was 10 years old. So I took all my junior and senior high in Red Deer, started my career there, so it's home. But we lived in several places, including Whitehorse, Yukon. And in 1964 through 67, when we were there was no live transmission of television. The Annex satellite hadn't gone up in the sky yet. So we watched Hockey Night in Canada on videotape, which was shipped up to Yukon Territory about 48 hours after the games were played. Anyway, in the craziness of all that, Bobby Hull came to visit us. And this was my first connection, firsthand experience with the NHL. And I swear he signed autographs and did photos for 5 hours on a really cool, windy summer day. It was summer, but he was really patient with all us kids. And my mom and dad, I can't find the picture, sadly. I lost my Wayne Gretzky rookie card and my Jacques Plante letter from Jacques Plante, the goalie, and my Bobby Hull signed photo one time in a move. But I have the book that mom and dad gave me in 1968. We had now been transferred down to Nova Scotia. So they gave me Bobby's book, which is Hockey is My Game. And it was more or less hockey tips all through the book. But you can see the encryption there from my mom and dad says, our son, Ronnie, the best little hockey player and hockey fan we know, keep skating. Merry Christmas from mom and dad, Hubbard's, Nova Scotia, 1968. And I'll show you a photo in this book of Bobby that is just, for me, kind of amazing. There's the Golden Jet with Chico Mackey's the one winger, but the guy in the middle is Phil Esposito. Now, from 1960, the year I was born, until Phil ran off 6 straight goal scoring titles, Bobby had 7. He had 6, Phil Esposito. So 13 out of 14 years, those two men were the top goal getter, what we now call the Rocket Richard Trophy winner in the NHL. The only guy to interrupt all that was Normie Ullman from Alberta. But yeah, amazing. And Daryl Sutter, I just referenced Daryl. That was his hero. He looked up to Bobby Hull. So it could go on for a long time. I mean, you know, there's obviously always more to that story that makes it somewhat uncomfortable. But gosh, in terms of an ambassador and a hockey player, you know, we're only human. And he sure was a guy who lit me up in the sense of loving hockey.
Yeah, no, very well said. Just the absolute legend of the game and on and off the ice, and what he did to grow the game in such a beautiful way was quite amazing to see. I'll throw it to Phil. He wants to go through some current events, and obviously with a recent trade that just happened later this afternoon. So Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, so thoughts on Bo Horvat, the newest New York Islander. What do you think of the trade today, Ron?
Well, it's huge for the Islanders. I'm sorry for Vancouver. You know, they lose what for me is just about a perfect hockey player. He's cut from the cloth of those Ryan O'Reillys and Patrice Bergerons. You know, what we always say, 200-foot game. Just a great family. That's the biggest thing I can tell you about the Horvats. He wears number 53 because of a goalie that was in camp with the London Knights at the same time Bo was. And unfortunately, the goaltender fell off the back of a pickup. There was a bunch of guys trying to scuttle over to practice, and the goalie, Ian Jenkins, was sitting on the back of the bumper, which is a bad idea. And the car suddenly lurched in front of the truck, and truck swerved, and he unfortunately lost his life, Ian Jenkins, in that. But he wore 35, and Bo flips it around to make it 53, which gives you all you need to know about the kind of person Bo is, and the whole family. They're huge in London, here in Ontario. Very strong backers of the St. Thomas Stars, which is a junior B team. Bo's brother played there. His father and his uncle both played there and tore up the junior B loop here in Ontario. So great hockey family. That's a good get for Matty Barzell, that's for sure.
Yes, it is.
Totally, that's a great story.
Phil,
I have a photo of the guy, but I can't find it just off the top. So if I find it, I'll show you.
No worries for sure.
Absolutely.
Ron, what's your thoughts on the kind of the Calgary Flames situation right now, and where things stand with them going into, you know, the final 30-some games of the season here?
Well, I still, think they're playoff built. You know, I would say that about the Jets too. Maybe the Jets don't have the D quite that Calgary has, but Josh Morrissey's having an unbelievable offensive breakout year. I do love, you've seen their record with and without Chris Tanev. Seems to be the difference maker, and that can happen. You know, Dustin Byfuglien left Winnipeg, and they left town for 4 years. So I think if Tanev's healthy, I really do like their. They miss Shillington too. That was a big loss for them on the blue line. He was kind of their Morrissey, just such a skater. But they're deep. I think Elias Lindholm and Backlund, just again, they are Bo Horvat, if not a touch above. So they're just got to get in, and it looks like Dan Vladar might have to carry the goaltending load until Jacob gets sorted out. That Ken Dryden always said, when you lose like he did to Edmonton last year, it kind of cuts you off at the knees. It was happening to Ken, and that's why he retired 8 years into his career. It's a big emotional hurdle that Jacob's got to get over here, but they're a good team, and I know Daryl is a great coach. He has his ways of motivating that always, like Tortorella's of the world, might raise some eyebrows, but I know what a great man he is and great coach, so not worried about him.
No, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was joking around in the chat today for this podcast that after that trade today, that Calgary's going to be dealing with Connor McDavid and Bedard next season, probably out of Vancouver.
Right. That's that. Well, I hate to say it, but let's hope Montreal or Vancouver lands Connor. Here's the guy, the kid Ian Jenkins.
Okay, perfect.
Unfortunately perished in that car accident as a London Knight prospect. He's from down in Detroit, is where Ian was from. But tragedy.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah. It's funny. We were when we did Hockey Day in Canada up in Owen Sound. Ethan Burrows wears 29 for the Attack, the OHL team there. and he tapes his stick now with white tape. He always used black all his career, but he was in a bit of a slump. So like guys do, he changed to the other, went to white tape. And in order to not have it distract him, it really bothered him seeing white tape. He put black along the top of the blade. He just ran with a hockey puck, to get it black, the same way as Matthew Barzell. And I see that Patrick Kane, we featured on Hockey Night in Canada Saturday night. Louis pointed out all the artwork on his blade tape, and Connor Bedard is an artist. So when he gets to the NHL, you watch his tape. That's one of the things that will be fun to focus on.
Yeah, we went over it a couple of weeks ago. It's so fun. Like I mentioned earlier, how my kids play minor hockey. It's so fun watching these young kids who idolize these players. They go ahead and they do the same kind of thing. Like the Gretzky jersey tuck was a
Right.
thing when I was growing up, right?
Yeah.
So that stuff's super fun to see for sure.
Mine
what do you think about
was
the Oilers? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, Phil. I was just going to say mine was to get. I really wanted a Northland hockey stick. You're too young to remember maybe Northland. But Gordie Howe had one, so I wanted one, and I played both in and out up until U11. And when I was in goal, I had to have DR gear. That was the big thing. Down here in Ontario, it's Pops Kineski and Vaughn were the more popular pads, but I had DR gear like Grant Fuhr wore.
Yeah, you look good, feel good, right?
That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think the Oilers have it figured out, or has it turned for them?
Well, I'm just getting ready to go to All-Star Weekend, and one of the things that I'll be doing outside of the broadcast is interviewing Mark Messier, just a little Scotiabank event. And, always remember Mark saying with Gretzky, we knew it was just a matter of time. We just had to surround him with the right supporting cast and we'd get the job done. And how could you not feel that with Connor? So, I mean, it's not enough that they have McDavid, they have the Messier in Draisaitl. So it's a perfect 1-2 punch. As long as they stay healthy, they're getting deeper and deeper, and you're seeing signs of coming together in the ways you want to come together come playoff time. And that is Brett Kulak fighting, or obviously Klim Kostin has come in and done a great job. Kind of reminds me of Zach Hyman. So they're up front fine. They've got everything, got great penalty killing, some toughness. Evander Kane health is really important, and it looks like he's great. Now it's just, can that blue line withstand one of the big teams when they run into a really big team? Can that team? Darnell can certainly handle it physically, and I think their blue line can physically. But that's going to be the litmus test, and especially if Jack Campbell looks like he's on a tear right now. That would be great. And I always, with Jack, I know he's got a history of self-deprecation and self-doubt that he allows, his vulnerability to be exposed, which people frown at. I don't. I just think he's won a World Junior Championship. And I think when you've won, it's in you. There isn't that. He may be quick to, be critical of himself in the name of his team because he wants them off the hook. But I know he believes he can win because he has.
Yeah. Right. It's very well said. And as a Leaf fan, having him, I'm a Leaf fan, Phil's a Flames fan, but we're in enemy territory here, Ron. But no, with him obviously in Toronto, he did everything he could to give that team the success. And the times moves on, but he's doing well in Edmonton, and I'm happy he's found his game, because everything you hear about him is he's an amazing person. And that's what I love about the game, is there's a lot of great people about the game. And this is where we kind of turn things into, talking about you and your career and where things, started for you. Obviously I love the game. I'm 38 years old. And, every Saturday night I watch you on Hockey Night Canada, and just everything that you do to cover the game in such a great, positive way I say this about Gene too, is Gene Principe does an amazing job with that as well, and shining the light on the players and on the game. But where did it all start for you? Obviously we know you're from Red Deer, but who was the first person that gave you an opportunity? Where did the passion come? And we know that you played, but
one of the things, just to echo what you said about Gene, and I find with the Oiler broadcast and the Oiler presentation, is he often is interviewing somebody who's doing work for a charitable cause, right? In that second intermission, Gene will give up time and give them a moment on the biggest platform there is in Edmonton, an Oilers broadcast. So he's a fantastic guy. And for me, it was, I think back to when I was a young boy, I could show you, the Hockey Night in Canada, there was a double album, a vinyl album that was released when I was 11 years old. And it was the history of the show up until that point. And my mom and dad gave me that vinyl double disc Hockey Night in Canada history record for Christmas. They knew how I was a devotee anyway. I was an only child, so I lived with the television, a lot of the time. And I set up my whole evening around Hockey Night in Canada. I had to have red nibs and a Slurpee from 7-Eleven and sunflower seeds, spits. That was just absolutely my routine. And I had to hear what the broadcaster said at the top of the clock. And I don't know why, because I had no ambition to get into broadcasting. I thought I would be a teacher when I finished high school. But along the way, in grades 10 through 12, some of my buddies began to work at the local radio station as operators. They didn't do anything on air, but they would go down and run reel-to-reel tapes on the FM station, which was, classical music. They would have to insert station identification. Again, this is a blast from the past, so I apologize to someone young listening. But in the old days, believe it or not, stations would always have at about 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, top of the clock, it would come on and say, "This is CKRD 99.9 megahertz in Red Deer, Alberta." And that station identification was, for whatever reason, very important. And somebody had to play that tape at the top of the clock. And that was the kid from high school in Red Deer that would get hired to come in and do that. Bizarre. That's the only thing they would do, is play that little tape that said what station you were listening to. And I worked into the rotation because a buddy was sick with a cold. And I just never got out of it. I started to feel, like you do, the energy of a broadcasting outlet. We were a tri-entity, FM, AM radio, plus television. You sensed the creativity, the excitement, everything from what was, on Casey Kasem's Top 40 to what was going on in news in the world. And that energy, I've told this story far too many times, but I had horrible anxiety as I was moving into this young career. I had panic attacks, and it just, for a kid that was a captain of all my hockey teams, class clown at every graduation, I froze a lot when I started my broadcasting career, partly because it was radio. We were just up against a console. There was no person that I was actually speaking to. It was just a microphone and a board. And maybe I was struggling to make the connection with the listener on the other side. And finally, a teacher named Wayne Barry came into the station and sort of gave me the magic secret. He said, "Ron, you have to speak one-to-one to someone who's like you. Your sense of humor, your ethics, and that'll make you authentic or genuine." Now, having said that, you guys, in 2023, you want to be careful because life has become about inclusivity, right? So
Yes.
if I start narrowing my focus to my, world, it could be at the expense of a lot of things. So, I've had to grow on the job for sure. But anyway, that was Wayne Barry came, and he was the guy that taught me how to do it, taught me, it's not hi everyone. It's not hello Canada. It's just you and one person, one-to-one communication with a person like you. And if you try that, Ron, eventually, there's no substitute for time and hard work, of course. But eventually, with that as sort of template, it should work out.
Yeah, no, very well said again. And when you look back and, from when it started, I guess in 1986 and where you're at now, obviously, like you say, you grew on you have to grow on the job, and, in life, we're changing, we're adapting to new things. But, do you ever just sometimes just pinch yourself and just say, like, it's amazing you're still doing it? Because I know when I talk to the NHL players that we have on Ron, there's just amazing things said about you. And, these guys watch, like I don't know if every NHL player watches, but I know if they're probably not watching that night or playing that night, they're watching Hockey Night in Canada. If it's not the late game, it might be the early game or whatever, depending what time they start or if they're playing on a Sunday. But do you ever pinch yourself and just say, it's amazing, I'm still doing this? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and especially when Rogers took over and, we know, I mean, probably what saved me was Don, was going to be kept, Don Cherry, and I was, his running mate. And then sadly, things just conspired that Grapes just didn't want to say sorry for that trouble we got into. And that was the end of that. And it's been a, gong show kind of dealing with that for 4 years, but got through that. And, there's a lot of that. I started under a bad sort of, feel because Dave Hodge had flipped a pen and left, and he was a fantastic host of Hockey Night in Canada for 16 years. And who's this, kid from Red River, as they would call it, so I've had a lot of that, having to, like Messier, writes in his book, and his father taught him that you just have to trust yourself. You have to be about the right reasons. And I kind of look at it, Bosco, that when you have a teacher or a lawyer, they have someone who's loved in their care. No matter what the situation, the biggest thing they want to remember is that there's someone who is loved in their care right now.
Yeah.
So they want to represent the good intentions, the best that can be afforded this child or this, in some cases, defendant. And I kind of approach, the love of hockey and all that was given to me in that light, that I have, players who are, they're in the crosshairs. They're, as Bono says in his new book, Surrender, the deal with rock and roll is you can have the world, but in return, the world will have you.
Yeah.
And that's what it is for, McDavid's of the world. And I try to never lose that, and just to be there to protect them, if anything, and to just, go back and think about, well, Brian and Kelly, Connor's mom and dad, his brother Cam, I know how, when I think of them watching their boy, and he gets criticized for being, one thing or another, and I mean, it's not like you can't, you don't call someone out if they're, doing something that you can't condone.
Yeah.
But as a rule, that's where you start, is that someone is loved, and how can I help that person who's loved to get out of whatever it is, or to advance and shine on their.
Yeah. No, and that's true. Like, and just getting to know some of the players that we've had on this pod, and just it's comforting. Like, and I was back and forth of how to bring this up, because I just posted something on social media the other day just about where I'm at with my mental health, and Kelly Rudy, who's a dear friend of yours and a great colleague, he's been on with us a couple times, and one of the great things that he says that you had said is there's a great saying that you say, I think it's
inner peace.
So just a beautiful saying. And like, I think the mental health side of it is very important, and especially more now in days. And my heart goes out to you, because I know how much that relationship meant for you with Don.
That's right.
And it's important to know that there's care and there's love. And when you're doing a broadcast, yes, these family members are watching it, their parents are watching it, their brothers and sisters are watching it, and all that, and wives and girlfriends and all that. And I think it's important to kind of shine the positive light on the game, and I think you guys do such an amazing job with that every Saturday night. And now not has carried over to with David Amber does on Mondays, and
Sure.
Carolyn Cameron does throughout the week on Wednesdays and other broadcast. And you guys got such a diverse group there. Can you speak to the group that you have that you get to work with on a nightly basis, weekly basis?
Well, it's funny. I was mentioning Jacques Plante was my boyhood hero. He's the guy that I wrote a letter to. There's my card with him in an Oilers sweater, of course, World Hockey Association. Here's David Amber's hero. It's Henry Aaron. And Hank Aaron, of course, became the home run king. And again, he did it with grace. He did it with such heat, that he had to contend with, being the trailblazer, or one of them. David has been, his father, Arnold Amber, kind of ran our union at CBC and ran the news division, and was a huge influence on me for all those negotiations that we would go through as members of the Canadian Media Guild, and just to listen to Arnold sort of navigate the emotion of those talks. You can see where David comes by his ability to referee and storytell through his dad, and his mom's the same way. Special guy. Carolyn Cameron, I just put her in this class of those, way before your time again, is Johnny Carson. But Johnny Carson was an iconic television late night host who had such humility, such a way of making you feel at ease, that you just wanted him as a companion. The last thing before going to bed was to chuckle a couple of times and just feel my world is safe with this guy in charge. And that's how Carolyn, and she's so young, right? But that you probably experienced this yourselves. It's just amazing how, especially in broadcasting, I don't know if that's a product of all the different platforms now, whether it's podcasts or social media, but kids are groomed way ahead of where folks like I was. I struggled to get, like I told you, I had anxiety till I was 35, and I was just kind of scrambling through my career in the early part. Now they seem to come up like ready to go at 20, which is nice. But she's great. She's gracious, and that's what I love about Carolyn, is that sense of humility that makes us all kind of relax and realize it's a game.
Yes, yeah, it is. In our recent episode, we interviewed 5 kids from the St. Albert Sabres. They were a part of the John Reed Memorial tournament here, and we were able to set up a booth and kind of interview some of them and whatnot. And all these kids are 13, 14 years old, Ron, and
Right.
they're just very well spoken, very well mannered. It's amazing to see. And we had some execs in the NHL and that listened to that episode and just said, it's amazing where the game's changed to that part. And I think a lot of that goes, obviously it comes, that happens at home with parents and all that and teachers. And I'm very close to all of my teachers that I've had throughout my life. And then obviously watching you guys in Hockey Night Canada and the amazing things you guys do there. Is there, I know you guys talk about Brian Spear a lot, and Kelly talks about him a lot. Is there something you can say about him that the listeners might not know? And he is the producer for Hockey Night Canada, and obviously a dear friend of yours too.
Yes, well, I don't know if Kelly's said this, but I would say, not too many producers have the gift of being able to listen to the show while running the show.
Correct.
A lot of times there'll be a kind of a checklist of things we want to accomplish in 4 minutes. We want to show a clip of McDavid and his speed through center ice and a great pass, a chip on the wall. Then we want to go and show a fine save by Jacob Markstrom, and we have it all set out. And then we do an audible on the air and we say, forget Markstrom, forget McDavid. What'd you think of that high stick at the end? And he'll have right away, he'll have highlights of that going. And he's calm under pressure, grace under fire all the time. He's been there through some really, again, I've had some moments in my career. I just, often it feels like you're trying to do ethics and nobody wants to be, there's an expression, nobody wants to be should on, and when I'm trying to teach, it just comes across as didactic or self-important or, it's just nobody's in the mood. They're trying to have a beer and watch a hockey game. And Brian has had to, kind of be there while I'm in the crosshairs for having done something like that. And just got me through it, by being a dear friend and by talking it through and sort of understanding, what I was trying to achieve, and if I got it wrong, helping me to not feel bad about it. So he's a special talent to be able to listen to the show and execute it. He's his wife and he are both what I would consider ethical canaries. An ethical canary is in the old days, they used to bring a canary into the mines, and the canaries would be the first to know if there was methane gas. They were susceptible to methane gas.
Yeah.
They would die, and then the miners would know to get out, that there was something wrong in that shaft. And an ethical canary, I sort of have this idea from Margaret Somerville of someone who understands intuitively when what is being said isn't right, and we better start to go in another direction here or try to assuage this situation here. And that's Brian. He's just brilliant that way.
Yeah. And you kind of talked about it earlier, getting ready for the hockey night, the All-Star game here. And I know the biggest thing we always look forward to is that interview with Gary Bettman
Yes.
and how that's going to be. And, how important is that relationship between you and Gary that you guys have at the All-Star game, but in other settings that you guys have? But how are you looking forward to that? And
Kind of, again, neither of us can win on some of the things that are happening right now, like, whether it's Ivan Provorov or, what the Rangers chose to do. I mean, if you don't have time, if you're in a loud arena trying to finesse that topic, it can go badly for both of us.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of half, dreading having to do the interview, but we haven't done one in a couple of years, just through circumstance. I wasn't in Vegas owing to COVID when they held the game there. So, I mean, it's good to have, honestly, the only thing that we ever really would, hammer and tong over was the labor situation. And I hated the salary cap, and I don't feel it's fair. I don't feel collective bargaining is fair. Back to this idea of, someone who's loved in your care. How can a hockey player compete with a billionaire owner in a negotiation? The player can't wait. Their career is going to be over in possibly 5 or 6 years. I just think this whole notion of collective bargaining when it comes to professional sports is crazy.
Yeah.
And Gary would always say, Ron, you can't make it about principle. It's business, and well, yeah, but Gary. And back and forth we'd go, and on these tangents. And it was a great joy to argue the salary cap, but that horse has left the barn. So really now, on ideas of ethics, I haven't a quarrel with Gary. He's a lawyer trained. So he, his wife, Shelley, is a psychologist or psychiatrist, forgive me. And so the two of them think a lot about the human condition, and I enjoy sparring with Gary, and I enjoy learning from Gary. But on that one particular subject, it used to go off the rails quite frequently, and that was, of course, funny. Nothing makes for better TV than two people cranky, but
Yeah.
you don't want to fake that, and you don't
No.
want to force that. And so, I mean, I'll sort of think in the next few days about where to take that interview. It might be a real gentle, just, it's 30 years ago he got the gig at the
Yeah.
All-Star game in Montreal. So it might be just kind of a warm and fuzzy. Might be a couple of things that crop up. Who knows the state of the investigation with the juniors. I feel so bad about
Yeah.
Again, it's almost like a story that doesn't belong to Bettman, and yet he's a steward of how we sort of lead from the top down. So these are conversations that are important, but those ones are so loaded that you can argue about money and who's making the most and how much they should make with the horn going off and the crowd going crazy. But to have a conversation about something that sensitive, I don't know if it's the place, to do that up in the booth during a game.
Yeah. Is there any kind of conversation where that could be a situation down the road in the studio in Toronto with you and him?
Right.
I don't know if
Oh,
there's
they'll have to be. Yeah, we sort of, where we tackled it a little bit with Allison Forsyth, who was a skier for Canada, and the ski team had a situation with harassment, maltreatment, and abuse, through several skiers. And we did a really, I thought, meaningful panel on that subject. And we certainly did a very meaningful show after the killing of George Floyd, which was kind of linked with Black Lives Matter. So you try to find a place. And then I think, I don't know how you feel, but, I think there's kind of been and I hate to see it because in a way it's very unfair too, but there's kind of been a timeout called on everything was happening so fast, whether it was #MeToo, Black Lives Matter, Truth and Reconciliation, all these really important transformative social movements, LGBTQ rights. And it was just hard to know where to stop talking.
Yes.
This happened to us at the Olympics years ago when Ben Johnson was busted at Seoul. For I'd say the next 6 Olympics, we had drug doping stories take over the games, and we would spend half the games doing tribunals about doping in sport. And we got out of it because Canada started winning so bloody many medals that we just started to follow the loot. But it was a drag on the good of sport, we kind of found ourselves, I think, you could feel there was a bit of a backlash. Now, I don't think that it's fair to have the blowback result in the cancellation of a conscience.
Yeah.
But we just have sort of learned the hard way. Who was really good for me was Duff Gibson, gold medalist in skeleton, firefighter in Calgary. And Duff would contact me after one of these, attempts to enlighten or illuminate. And he'd say, Ron, you got to know when you say white male privilege, every hand is going up right there and saying, don't give me that. I don't need to be made to feel bad right now. I'm just trying to watch my team. He said, so there are certain things you just can't say in the way you're trying to educate. And that was a very valuable exchange, that he explained how when they deal with these topics within the department, the fire department, in order to maintain morale and not have people starting to look askance and saying, oh yeah, there's the, squeaky wheel getting the attention. They had to find ways to make this done without judgment, without the wrong use of words. So powerful, right? Words you don't mean to offend. It's like Twitter. How can you interpret in a few characters what really was meant? So anyway, that's kind of where I feel we're at right now. Is almost like in a window of waiting for the next opportunity to sort of as a group. That was what was nice about hometown hockey. We could kind of do it without a heavy-handedness. It was just telling the good story. Like if I try to deal with Provorov's situation, all I say to anyone is, first of all, how am I supposed to counsel religion? Taliban are running Afghanistan now, whether we like it or not, and they're imposing religious values on the citizens of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Second of all, in the case of Provorov, I kind of move away from that and say, for me, I've had 3 meaningful things in my life where I was standing and I felt history. One was Luzhniki Ice Palace in Moscow, where Henderson scored. I stood in the goal crease there. One was Cape Canaveral, Launchpad 39A. I stood where they landed on the moon, where that ship left the Earth. And I felt it. It was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm standing here. What history. And the third one was at Rogers Place in Edmonton when I stood with Tara Sloan at center ice during the anthem, and Luke Prokop was right there, big six on the blue line. And I just thought, oh my God, this, I could feel the earth move, just my admiration for what he's doing. Represents. So that's how I treat it, I've tried to learn. As I said, Duff Gibson was good at that. Just pick the great story, like you guys were talking earlier, the positivity.
Yeah.
Emphasize that, and then hopefully you won't be preaching. But it's hard.
It is hard. And one thing I missed during the pandemic, which is weird to say this, but because the pandemic obviously was hard, but the hashtag join the conversation that you guys had on Rogers Sportsnet and Hockey Night in Canada. And because I thought we had the time to have the conversations for these. And it's like, so, and you're 100% right, Ron. So much has happened that we've lost that, but so much is happening right now in the game with the 2018 team and the Rangers situation here and Ivan Provorov that it's almost like, hey, it's a story for 24 to 48 hours, but then it's right. Gone, it's forgotten. And it's sadly, Jeff Merrick said it on his show last week. He's like, I don't want to say this, but then this is what he said. I don't know the exact quote, but it was, this is probably just going to get pushed aside in a couple of days. And then obviously then you hear it's like, okay, then his jersey sold out in tons of different places, Provorov's jersey. Right. And it's like, and I think Ryan Whitney said this the best on his podcast. He's like, well, you weren't buying that jersey before, you didn't know him before. So it's a tough thing, because I think the game has changed in such a positive way. And when I was in Red Deer, in your hometown, at the Ivan Hlinka Gretzky Cup, a lot of the conversations I had with some of the people around there, scouts and media likes and all that, and agents, is, there is a lot of positive stuff that happens in our game, and there is some negative stuff, but we still need to talk about the things that are important for having the conversation, so we can help educate people. That's just me rambling on here on this.
No, it's important.
Yeah,
I think absolutely, Bosco. That's the gist. Is you can't just throw your hands in the air and say, I'll stand idly by. You just need. We have all had to learn, and as I said, I'm still growing. I'm going to be 63 in April, and this last 5 or 6 years has been at once exciting, and at once I'm filled with fear, and I'm filled with dread every day, because suddenly you're the face of a topic that doesn't meet with everybody's approval, and then Twitter takes off on you in crazy ways. Your history's dredged up about anything, whether it's a shirtless in a bar, it doesn't matter. They'll find you. And,
they'll find you something. Yeah.
And so it's who like, how do you lead anymore? It's so difficult to lead in 2023. And I think it's good. It has been a very important advancement that we don't just have a pulpit and someone telling us, how to think, whether it's the New York Times or the CBC National News. Yeah. It is good that we're active on these other platforms and kind of as a group holding people's feet to the fire. But as you just said, is it true acceptance of Provorov, or is it just the thing to do? Is it fun to be able to go out there and say, well, I kind of have a deal with the devil here because it makes me feel good that, I'm getting after that establishment that's been trying to teach me, and there's a lot of that. And it's unfortunate. Yeah,
there is. Phil, I'll pass the puck over to you here.
I just, honestly, I've just been listening to you talk, Ron, and it's just, it's weird because it's a comforting thing, because we've all grown up watching you every Saturday night, and it's so comforting to just sit here and listen to you talk. It's funny because we have a ball hockey team, the namesake of the podcast, called the Two Mutts, and we went around the locker room, we're like, guys, we're having Ron MacLean on tomorrow. Anybody have a question for him? And one of our guys, like, how does he remember everything? How does he remember everybody? How does he remember people's names? How does he remember situations? And I'm like, I'll ask him. So I thought about this very carefully because I used to work for the school board before I changed careers. And you meet kids every day, you meet new people every day. And like something that I would always do is whenever I met a new kid, I'd ask his name and I would take a second and I'd always relate that kid's name to somebody famous.
Right.
So like for example, if a kid's name was Ron, came into the classroom, Ron MacLean, he's
Yeah.
always Ron MacLean to me. So the question was like how do you do it? How do you stay so sharp?
Yeah. Well, there are days you're not. Like, it's funny. I was driving in on Saturday. We did a show Friday night and Saturday night.
Yeah.
And we had a big scramble going on because we had COVID and snowvid and all these different things happening that were causing us to lose crew members, both technical production and on air. And so it was a bit of a makeshift panel and a great night to work with Anthony Stewart, Justin Bourne, and Jennifer Botterill, and felt great. You know how you do. It felt like a good show. And you next day you come into work with a little extra kick in your step, that thinking, I'm really looking forward to going back to work. And then I was lost 5 seconds into the show. I was, what is they talking about? And it was like, I got cocky. I let my guard down a little bit, felt like I had it under control. And of course, the minute you do that, you know what happens. So if you had a method of personally trying to think of a way to, because you know how important their name is, and that's what you have to do.
Yes.
You've got to. I play the same trick in my mind as, what is the connection and why do I remember this person? Don't always do that, but if it's work related, like I was on the ice at Owen Sound with the junior team for over a half an hour. I was on live, just rambling around, talking to different players on the ice. And I have to admit, there was a couple times when I couldn't think of the guy's first name, So Cedar, get over here. Guy with SEED is his name. So I call him Cedar. And that's it. In hockey, you can get away with that, right? Nobody would know the difference. But for the most part, I had it in my head, and that's all preparation. Back to that Wayne Barry, who taught me to speak 1-to-1. He said, Ron, 10 hours of prep for every hour on the air. And I, when I hear someone say, and I know they mean it in a fun way, I've never worked a day in my life doing broadcasting. I know you never have a second off. It is in you all the time. How in the hell am I going to say big game tonight for the 7 millionth time?
Yeah.
So you're thinking of new ways to say the same thing, and you're definitely trying to retain an info load. And the only, you hope you have a little bit of that in you. My mother was really good with that kind of thing, so I assume I inherited her memory, but I have to prep it. I have to handwrite it out. If I read it, I don't retain it. If I write it, I got it. And that would be my secret, is handwriting all the things and then it's gone. I flush it, and usually it's in here, but not always. Saturday, we opened the show with Hockey Central, presented by DraftKings. How hard is that?
Yes.
I opened with DraftKings presents. And now what am I doing? I've got it in the wrong order. Where do I go from here?
And then the rest of the night's just done, right?
Exactly. Now I used to have
snowballs.
I used to, when I worked at CKRD doing radio, there was a waste paper basket in the far corner of the control room. And I would crumple up paper and fire it at that garbage can. And if it went in, going to be a good show today. If it didn't,
no.
Why would you do that to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Little superstitious, hey?
I was back then. Yeah. Don't forget, I was 16.
Yeah.
So you had hometown hockey. My question is, did you have a favorite location that you guys did that at? Like for me personally, I moved out to rural Alberta just this last summer. So my kids growing up, they always played for Confed in Edmonton. And you'd go to Terwilliger Rec Center every week for their game, and then that would be that. We moved out to rural Alberta. They now play for the New Sarepta Eagles, and it's just different. Those small town rinks are just different. It's a sanctuary, right? It's so comforting. It's the smell, it's the sounds, it's the looks. So like, do you have a favorite? And maybe also touch on like why is that? Why are those small town rinks so important?
Well, again, back to Bobby Hull, when I met him as a young boy, I mean, my only connection to the NHL, my only firsthand experience was if they come to you. You're not going to go from Whitehorse to Maple Leaf Gardens. So, there's a huge, we were a bit of a traveling circus. And when we were in a small town, it was a kind of a deal. There was a real excitement about, oh, that's nice. Right. They're here. Whereas
and the community came out.
Yeah, Edmonton could have a million things going on. Guns N' Roses at one place, the Oilers training camp there, the Klondike days are over here. Who knows? A million things could be happening all at once in Edmonton. So we certainly had good turnouts and some nice shows in Edmonton. But I definitely agree with you. And for us along those lines, probably the biggest thing that was clear early on is that in the Indigenous communities, when we did Enoch Cree Nation, when we did Peguis First Nation in Manitoba, it was unbelievable. Just unbelievable to get the wisdom of, whether it's Chief Billy Morin at Enoch. Everybody, Steve Buffalo was a former Notre Dame hound that helped us, and I can't name all the committee, but that particular one, again, was a couple of days. The Edmonton Oilers came in and did an alumni game. So Barry Stafford, I still have my beautiful sweater, gloves that Barry gave me for one game, where I got to go back door and wait for Glenn Anderson to get me the puck, which he would do 12 times a period. Those First Nations experiences, and we had a lot of them. We had the Chiefs do welcomes in many of our locations. Like as an example, in Cranbrook, home of the Niedermeyers, and Stevie Eiserman was born there, and now Bowen Byram is probably the most famous kid out of Cranbrook playing now. But the Chief Catherine Tanise came, leader of the band at Cranbrook. And her dad went by the name Joe Whitehead to us, but that wasn't his real, of course, Indigenous name. But he was a great and super respected hockey coach in Cranbrook, and they love the sport and are really great caretakers of hockey the way they are the land. So that was neat. And I'll tell you one last one. We were going to Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland, and Labrador. And for me, the flight was on first thing in the morning on a Sunday morning. So I do Hockey Night in Canada till around 10:15 at night, get in the car, go home, get back up at 4 a.m, get to the Toronto Pearson Airport, fly to Halifax, get on another plane, fly to St. John's, Newfoundland, get on another plane, fly to Gander, Newfoundland, and then get in a car and drive 2 hours to Grand Falls, Windsor, Newfoundland. And I thought, what in the hell are we going to talk about in Grand Falls, Windsor? Well, the first Newfoundlander to play in the NHLs from there, Alec Faulkner. And they had a guy, George Scott was the play-by-play guy of the Cataracts, their senior team. Honestly, Bob Cole incarnate. He was brilliant. And the Cataracts went on to win the Allen Cup that year. And amazing. There was story after story. And Barry Manuel was the name of the mayor. And he threw a little shindig after the show for us, with fiddle playing and beer everywhere, Blue Star. And just a unbelievable experience. Hard place to get to, and it was hard to get out of that time.
Yeah.
But that one's very memorable.
Nice.
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually went to a hometown hockey event when you guys were in St. Albert, and my
Remember
boys
the
were just
lineup for
little
Mark?
guys.
Oh, we went twice, so I don't know which one you went to. Was Messier there?
We saw Lanny McDonald there.
Okay, yeah, that's the second stop. But
And
that one was special.
We had our little guys, and he was just so great with my little boys. It was amazing.
He is, yeah. I always say he was to Calgary what Gretzky was to Edmonton, right? He put them on the map.
Yeah,
he gave them the chance to win, and eventually they did. And I just played with him at Owen Sound, and I always say it's funny how when you're like, he's only 7 years older than me, and it feels like he should be 65 years older because he was in the NHL on Hockey Night in Canada while I'm sitting in my basement in Red Deer watching him.
Right.
The Islanders in '78, but he's just slightly older, and so we're peers in terms of life experiences. And he is such a man. I'll tell you a funny story. I get up in the morning to check out Sunday morning from Owen Sound, and the lady Coral at the front desk says, "Here, Ron, Lanny left his eyeglasses. Can you get him to him?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely. I'll get him to him." So I sent them to him the next day I gave him a little gift to a Tom Thompson, a painter from up there, a coin. And I said, "Here, this will be your good luck, your new lucky loony," because he won with that at Salt Lake. And I said, "And here are your glasses that you left behind." And he says, "Thank you for returning my Costco glasses, Ron. That postage costs more than the glasses."
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I don't wear them.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that sounds like something my dad would do too. So
Yeah. All right. So we'll finish up on this. Obviously, you got the Red Deer jerseys behind you. And I believe the dates are August 8th and 9th for the Child Advocacy Golf Tournament in Central Alberta here. That center means a lot to us here at our podcast, and what Jody and Mark have done with and the amazing whole staff that they have there. How special is that to you? I know you're going to be emceeing the event, the golf tournament, the day prior and also the day, but now we can kind of get back to doing them. I know we've been taken away with COVID, but how important is the Child Advocacy Center to you, Ron?
Well, again, I reflect on my childhood there, and you mentioned, Phil, your connection to education. I had a teacher in grade 7, Ed Shields, who started the year by laying out the curriculum for the upcoming season. We did trimesters, so we would do subjects for 3 months and then flip to another set of subjects. And he said, okay, this is how it's going to work in the first trimester. We're going to have social studies Monday morning, and then language arts Monday afternoon, which is our history and English. Then first thing Tuesday morning, we'll do spelling. And we all groaned, and he says, what, you don't like spelling? We said, no, we're in grade 7 now. We know how to spell. He says, well, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a word, and if anybody in the class can spell it, we won't do spelling. So the word was Albuquerque. And blessedly, one of the guys that I played hockey and football with, Gerald Dory, he had been to New Mexico that summer, so he got the spelling of Albuquerque right, and we were off the hook. We didn't take spelling that year, if you can believe it. And I always remember, I can't spell to this day, so there's a bit of a bad side to the story, but Ed Shields kind of gave me that sense of empowering the kids. And that's what the Advocacy Center is, golden. It just creates these trusts and these relationships. And, Sheldon Kennedy kind of was the original sort of patriarch of the idea there. And Terry Lowen's kind of my connection, whose brother Darcy Lowen played in the National Hockey League. But all the Flames and Oilers collaborate. I played golf last year with Lanny. He had to leave after 9 holes, but he was there for the night before and everything else. And then Colin Fraser, who's from Sylvan Lake and won the, with Chicago. And Colin just had his birthday this past weekend, and all these special contributors to help the kids, one of whom was me. On that very course, I was a junior member of the Red Deer Golf and Country Club. So, which was crazy because I would have never been able to have afforded a true adult membership, but they let us kids play for $30 at Red Deer back in the day. And so many nice memories, and it'll be a chance to catch up with all my Red Deer friends, most of whom now live at the lake. And just, a brilliant cause. And as you mentioned, Bosco, the organizers are, it's top notch.
Yeah, there they are. They are. So,
and Cam, last year, Cam Moon came down, Bob Stauffer came down. I think if I'm missing any of the broadcasters, but so they kind of helped share and offload some of the interviewing and emceeing duties, which was much appreciated.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And it's going to be another amazing event, and it's going to raise a lot of money for a lot of great causes of helping them out. And just I can't speak enough of great things about what they do. We had Brent Sutter on, and he had said the same thing of how important it is, and it's in that backyard of Red Deer. And it's unfortunate, I guess, in a way he said it too, is that there is that center, but it's also great that it is there too, for people that need it. And they're building a new one, so it's quite amazing. I don't know if you've seen some of the pictures of the new one yet. It's pretty sweet. And I'm in that industry of building homes and whatnot, so I love that as well, and just seeing the kind of the progress that makes. So, Ron, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here on the 2 Months podcast. It definitely means a lot to Phil and I and the rest of our team, and also our listeners too. So, thank you.
Anytime, Joshua. And thank you, Phil. And good luck to the kids. And you're so epic. Tell them to keep lighting it up over there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was an interview with Ron MacLean. A dream come true again, kind of back to back with Doug Gilmore and Ron MacLean here on the 2 Months podcast. It definitely means a lot, and I hope everyone enjoyed that conversation. Phil, your thoughts?
Yeah, like I kind of mentioned in the podcast, I just caught myself just lost in just listening to his stories and what he was saying. And I think there was probably like a good half an hour where I kind of went radio silence, because there's a ton of respect for that guy, for what he's done, and like what he brings to everybody's house every single weekend. So that's kind of where I went for about half an hour there. And it was amazing though. It was really great.
Yeah, it was very special. Definitely means a lot to kind of get that interview done, and another one of the bucket list ones that we've loved to have. And things are still slowly working out in that way of 2023 here, and we appreciate them coming on and sharing their story, sharing the conversation. And I know we might get some feedback here and some whatever about not diving into more of situation with him and Don, but a lot of it is out there. So I don't know if what more could be added to here. He's been on other platforms before and spoke about it, and to us that we kind of do things, I guess, in a different way on our end of the podcast, and we try to have the positive, lighter conversation, and I understand there's the difficult conversations that need to happen too. But out of respect, um, if anyone wants to, come at us, they can come at me for that, because there's a decision that, kind of I made, and obviously talking to the team about it too, of, going down this road that we went down with Ron, and I think what people heard will be a lot of positive to that too. So, but I know that there's always that tough conversation of why didn't you dive more into it, knowing that he did kind of bring it up a bit, but that's I think if people listen to us long enough, they know that's something that we will probably not jump into. Phil, your thoughts, just again, the amazing person and what he's done for the game on and off the ice too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just so important. We just touched there at the very end about the golf tournament coming up and just how involved he is in that and his community still. You'd think a guy like that's probably pretty busy.
Yeah.
But he always takes the time, and he took the time for us tonight too, and just can't thank him enough.
Yeah, exactly. So without that, I don't know if there's anything more to add. I hope everyone enjoys that interview. And we'll be back with another episode in a few days. So I really appreciate everyone taking the time to listen in and join the conversation that we had here with Ron MacLean on the Two Mutts podcast. We'll chat soon.